expects a Spanish Inquisition!
Hello YouTube and welcome back to Alpha Wargaming. We've not had the channel launch we hoped, but to be honest I'm just using this as a vehicle to give some opinions on a game that I recently played just very briefly with my son. So it's something that I think we're both going to try and get into. We were looking for an alternate to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which we played a lot of, and for some reason Inquisitor came up. I'm not entirely sure why. So Inquisitor, if you don't know, is a RPG system that was unsuccessfully launched by Games Workshop in the mid-90s, using bigger models, and 56 mil, something like that, bigger models and stuff like that. So it was an interesting game, really weird for me to try and pick it up at this stage, and I thought it was a really interesting one to have a look at in 2020. So this is a game that's, what, 24, 25 years old, something like that. And we've all been spoiled with things like Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which is a really elegant rule system. So we had a game earlier on, and I just wanted to give my opinions on them and just to let you know what this game looks like and is it worth looking at in 2020. So the one thing I will say about this game is that the world is fantastic and the intro to the book is amazing. If you give me a second, I'll just read this out for you. You have been told of the Inquisition, that shadowy organisation which defends mankind and the Emperor from the perils of heresy, possession, alien dominance and rebellion. You have been told the Inquisition are the ultimate defence against the phantoms of fear and terror which lurk in the darkness between the stars. You have been told the Inquisition are the bright saviours in an eclipse of evil, purest and most devoted warriors of the Emperor. You have been told the Inquisition is united in its cause to rid the galaxy of any threat from without or within. Everything you have been told is a lie. Really cool. To be fair, I really like the intro to this book, and the atmosphere of this book is something that will recur again and again as an outstanding thing. To be 100% honest with you, and just to put this out there, I'm not a 40k aficionado. I've read a few of the books, I've read all the Eisenhorn books, that kind of thing. But I'm not a huge 40k fan, never really got into the game. I'm not a massive fan of 40k as a gaming system. Loved Necromunda though, and I've been into Games Workshop games for a very, very long time, and obviously play a lot of things. So, really, really good game. Really, really good intro to the game, should I say. What I noticed when I was trying to get into this, I suppose, is there's not a lot of videos on this on the internet. So we had a look on YouTube, and there's a lot of stuff on the Inquisition video game, which is cool. Well, it's not, the game kind of sucks, but there's a lot of stuff on the Inquisition video game, and there's a couple of reviews of the book that are really brief, but there's nothing about the gameplay. I'm hoping to get a gameplay video up of me and my son playing this, just so you guys get a feel of how it actually plays. So it was an intriguing one for me to learn from the beginning. I got hold of both books and had a read through them, and the first thing I noticed is we have kind of been spoiled by 5th edition D&D and Pathfinder and other modern RPGs. You see, this is a very 90s game. It's not, what's the best way of putting it? It is not a very elegant system, but we'll come on to that in a little bit. The other thing that's really weird when you first get hold of it is it doesn't play like a modern RPG. There are no levels, there are no leveling systems, there's no balance in place at all. It's a really bizarre thing when you first get hold of it, and it's a really difficult book to try and get your head around how to use. So creating characters is really cool. If you're into 40k lore, the detail is absolutely insane. I mean, even bolt guns, there are like 6 different marks of bolt guns, from the ones that are sort of chain fed to and it kind of goes along the progression of the miniature line and how they develop the miniatures and so on. It's really cool, and you can be all sorts, from demon hosts to Adeptus Arbites to Marines to normal Inquisitors to all sorts of stuff. There's tons and tons and tons in there. So it's really, really cool. I've got to say, the creative character blew me away. Really enjoyed it. It is odd though. So you're not creating a character at a certain level 1 and then building them through or anything like that. You're creating an Inquisitor, and by the time you're an Inquisitor in this game, you're already absolutely badass. So the character you're creating is what he is. There's no limits on items, psychic powers, armor, whatever you like. You can pretty much load him up as well as you like. And all classes are not created equally. So anybody who knows anything about Inquisitor traditionally, and I'm sure a few people will watch this who play it and will correct me a million times in the comments for a lot of the stuff I say. As I say, it's just kind of a first impressions video of it. The Marines are absolutely insane. I'll circle back round as to why a little bit later on. But yeah, creating characters, one of the first things you'll notice is a Marine is absolutely insane. So a standard human may have a strength value of maybe 50, 60, something like that. A Marine's standard strength value is about 200. Because of that, there's a few bits that don't scale very well. Melee damage doesn't scale well with Marines. A Marine punching someone is 10 times more vicious than someone getting shot with a bolt gun or some heavy weapons. To be fair, they're absolutely horrific because the scaling just doesn't work particularly well. I know that a lot of people put caps on things, and I think this is a game that's going to require some home rules to work well. Not that that's a problem, but you know. Yeah, like I said, the details are amazing. The psychic abilities go, you've got lots of different, almost like schools of psychic abilities, and some of them are really cool in and out game, and it looks really, really fun. Creating characters is a lot of fun. Creating characters in this game, though, one thing is a little bit odd. Well, odd. It's non-traditional. You're kind of creating a group. So you're creating a whole party. So each player will create a whole party, is how it suggests you play it. So you create your Inquisitor, your main character, and then you have his retinue around him. The way that we have done it, we have a Marine in my son's team, for example. The Marine is clearly the most powerful person there, but he isn't the leader of the group. And if he dies, the game it will continue. It's if his Inquisitor dies that we're going to mess things around. So the balance of the party is weird, and the fact that you're creating a whole party is a little bit weird. I don't think this is a game that is going to work very well for power gamers at all, because you can just go crazy. Even a DM reining you in, if you try and min-max this game, you're going to absolutely blow it away. It isn't balanced at all, but it really isn't balanced for that kind of stuff. As I say, no experience system, no leveling system, but we'll circle back round to why that might not be the same sort of problem. Just to put it out there as well, we played it at 28mm, not at the full scale. So when Inquisitor was launched, one of the reasons it really struggled was you had to buy bespoke models for it, or convert your own, which I always thought was an odd thing to say. Convert your own higher models, and it's like, yeah, you can use. It's really difficult to make a Gene Stealer model look realistic with a bigger 40k model. The scales just never worked for me, and I always thought that was suicide. Use the range you've got, man. And some of those Inquisitor models are absolutely exquisite. I'm not saying anything about that. They're absolutely out of this world, and they're very much collector's pieces. And I can see why they do it. With what I say towards the end of this video, with my summary, I'll circle back round as to why a very low model count might not be a problem. But we definitely are playing it with 28, and I would recommend anybody who's playing it nowadays, personally, play it with 28. It's not a massive problem. I can't remember what they use. It's not inches. I can't remember what they use. They use a different measuring mark. We just converted it to inches, and we didn't find a massive problem. The only thing I would say about converting to inches is it's a little it's a little bit off. So you guys move real quick in inches. To put it into perspective, one sprint action can move you up to 10 inches. And dependent on your agility, you might have 3 or 4 actions go off in a turn. So it's you can clear a little table. You need more space than you would do with Necromunda, potentially, dependent on how you play the game. Okay, so I suppose the next thing to talk about is the actual gameplay, and the actual gameplay mechanics, it's very difficult for me to talk about them without being super critical, which I don't mean to, well, I mean, it is what it is. I'll just give you a very brief idea of a couple of things that really stand out to me. So the number of actions you take it in turns dependent on your initiative, or in this case, I think it's your speed value is the sort of the tiebreaker. And you have a number of sort of action points. And what you do is you plan out your turn. So you say you've got 5 action points. You might say, I'm going to pop around this corner. It's 1 action. Draw a gun. It's 2 actions. Take aim. Fire. Pop back round the corner. All 5 actions. You then roll 5d6, and for every 4+, you get to do an action. So when you're planning out your turn, you have to really, really think that on average, you're only going to be able to do half the things you want to do. Because if you roll badly, all you're doing is popping around a corner and pulling your gun out, and you're just sitting there ready to get shot. So you really have to be very careful with it. And I suppose that random element is very 90s. It's really, really 90s. I personally have no problem with it. I like the dynamic nature, and it adds to this hugely dangerous game that Inquisitor kind of becomes if you play it in a certain way. I would recommend creating digital character sheets. Slightly controversial. I made an Excel one, and me and my son use, and I found tracking damage and things a lot easier with it. Also, you can put a ton of notes on there that are very dynamic for each character. The different type of notes that you need are different for each character. So I would personally say use a digital one. I'm sure a pen and paper one's fine, but you're probably going to need to write a new one out every single time. And I don't know, I just found it a little bit easier to do that. But the character sheets are pretty detailed. Oh my god, there are tables for everything. Anybody who's played old school RPGs will be fine with this, or at least familiar with this. There are tables for everything. You want to know the range of your weapon? It's a letter. So what range is it? B. And then you look up what B means on a table. Where you get hit, the damage that you do, what the damage does to the person. Oh my goodness, there is a table for everything in this game. And if you get a digital copy of this game, print it and put bookmarks on it, or something, because you are going to be jumping from table to table to table to table. I don't know if anybody has, but you could put together a really good summary sheet very easily for this with 7 or 8 tables on it, because you need them desperately. Again, the digital character sheet we put together has a lot of these tables just sat on it, and a physical one could do too, but tables everywhere. It's not an elegant system at all. Damage is really complicated. You are tracking so many different things when you take damage or when you deal damage. Not just where you've hit them, how much damage you've done to them, how injured they are and what that means to them, whether you've hit them in the leg and now they can no longer move as fast or whatever. And then you also have like a cumulative damage counter. And you can knock people out if you do enough damage with one hit and things like that. And it's damage. Working out the damage takes about as long as the rest of the bits of combat added together. It can be quite, especially early on. I mean, I'm sure it gets easier the more comfortable you get with the system, but when you first start, damage takes a while. It's very detailed. The turn sequence is really weird. So I've read through the book a couple of times, and I'm sure people will tell me that this is right or wrong or whatever. But the examples of play in there, everything seems to be in the turn sequence that you would use for combat, where you roll for actions, that kind of thing. And that includes investigation, sneaking around, and you're locked outside there's no combat at all. And I suppose it's that mindset of mine of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which is the first edition of D&D that I played, by the way, so apologies that I keep referring to it. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there in my position, though. It seems really clunky to just be wandering around looking at a door trying to figure out what to get through or whatever in turn sequence. Seems really odd. I think we've figured out a way of playing around that, but the way the book is written, I think basically the whole gameplay takes place in that turn sequence, and it could be really clunky if you had 3 or 4 players. As I said, not elegant at all. There are no monster builds. There are none, and maybe there are in other books. I just have the two base books, and I'm sure there's a ton of supplements where people have done them. I'm 100% sure that it's out there, so you can get them. But if you just get the 2 books and you're just looking through it really quick, there aren't. And putting together an encounter as a DM, which I generally have been, is weird and different and a little difficult. And the system is so detailed, you aren't going to get through mobs of chaff easily. I mean, no, you're not. You're not. It's not going to be a lot of fun to grind through chaff, or to put together little encounters, your usual little ambushes that you can blast through. It's just not going to be a lot of fun to do. It's going to be a grind to do, and you're not getting experience for it as well. So, and you guys probably got a ton of better equipment than any of the guys to get ambushed by. So, it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. Balancing encounters is mad in this game, especially when you come in at it from I suppose like a competitive sort of system. It's really weird to put together encounters, and it's not a dynamic system. So I've spent the last I have no idea how long this video is, maybe 5 minutes, lambasting this old-fashioned, clunky 90s system. Doesn't really work, doesn't really fit anywhere in our day and age. Cool. However, I really like Inquisitor. My 13-year-old attention deficit son really likes Inquisitor. And if you approach it in a different way to how you would approach a normal game like in Necromunders or something like that, because I mean, you're both controlling gangs, everybody's controlling a little gang or a retinue. If you approach it from a different angle to something like Necromunda and a totally different angle to something like Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to get a very different system that fulfills a very different purpose. And it might take a little bit of work, but I think this could do things that no other games, or not many other games, can do. I don't play hundreds of RPGs, so I'm sure there's stuff out there that does this. But so the way that this is really designed to work for me, or the way that we're going to design it to work for me, is there's going to be a lot of role playing that we're going to just take away from the game. It's a very miniatures based game. We're going to pull a great deal of the role playing away from the game. And the game itself is going to be played in set pieces. Scenes from a movie is essentially how I'm looking at it. I think the way the system works is designed for short set pieces, scenes, not entire movies, short scenes, and that's where the detail will really make its impact felt in a positive way. I personally am going to be taking a lot of the interactions and the investigation out of the game and doing it sort of offline, as it were. And when you do that, a few little things that are traditional in RPGs just go away. Quick encounters, normal encounters against mobs. In D&D, it'd be goblins ambushing you, you beat them up and you get whatever. Do you know what? I'm just going to say we kill them. I'll give the players a choice of, did you let them live? In this game, you're not an aspiring hero. You're an Inquisitor. You're one of the top, most powerful things in the universe, like in the 40k universe, from a political standpoint. You have incredible power, and your guy is not supposed to be challenged by weak things. I don't think this game is designed for that. The fact there's no experience means that grinding is completely pointless. Take grinding out of it. This is a set piece narrative game, not that kind of thing. So those kind of quick encounters, don't design them. Just don't bother assume these badasses are going to kill him. If he's got a Marine on his team, that guy can throw people into space with his strength, and he can take a multi-melter shot to his naked chest and be fine. Right? Seriously, these guys are. It's okay to just take those situations out of it, and I think the game will work really well like that. Lots of investigation to the roleplay. I think it's probably the kind of system that works really well where more than half of the danger, more than half of the challenge is solving a puzzle, is solving a crime, solving a case, using the character's intelligence checks and things to see how well they do. As much as it is the combat. And the combat we'll come on to in a second. But I think it can work perfectly fine. And just as a side note to this, I would consider, if you have a group of sort of quote-unquote traditional RPGers playing this game, I'd consider getting them to play as one group, one Inquisition retinue, where you have each one create one character, and they each control them. Especially if you've only got 2 or 3. 2, 3, 4, I think it'd work fine for. It's always difficult when you have to assign somebody as the leader of a team. I get that in an RPG situation, but this is a very different approach to a game. And I'm not saying that always works. So the way that my son and I are playing it, for example, his guy is, and his team are hunting down they've got this whole situation to try and deal with where they're trying to hunt down a demon, and they are in turn being chased by another Inquisitor who is hunting them down because he considers them heretics. So the lore is fantastic in this game, and it allows a lot of Inquisition on Inquisition, especially if somebody's going to be a really fanatical heretic. It really helps. So it can be done that way. I would just say consider doing it the other way. The other thing to consider as a positive to picking this game up and giving it a go is the world is amazing. I don't know if you've read any of the books, if you read any of the background here, the world is absolutely fantastic. It really, really is. I don't like 40k. I never liked 40k. But the universe is cool and it is unique. I think it's lost a lot of what it had that made it unique, or at least it's getting a little bit more diluted. This is a very 90s 40k universe. This is very Eisenhorn, if you've ever read those books, which is why the Marines are super duper humans. They are, I mean, in those books, in the 90s fluff, Marines were incredibly rare. You very rarely saw them. Unlike a Games Workshop store, where all you see is Marines, in the universe, there's countless billions of people and countless hundreds of Marines, or however many, not a lot anyway, maybe a few thousand. Marines are intentionally overpowered in this game, because in that universe, Marines are like that. And one thing that, Eisenhorn in one of the books meets a Marine, and I think he's like 150 years old at this point, Eisenhorn, and he's seen all sorts. And he finds it very hard to be around him, because they're just totally different creatures. And that's kind of how they play this game. And I think if you embrace the lore of that 90s unbalanced 40k world, I think you can get so much out of this game. Because as I was saying before, especially if you have a fanatical hereticus Inquisitor who's hunting down the first Inquisitor, or you've got 2 Inquisitors trying to go for the same prey, from different angles, one looking at it from an alien angle, one from a demonic angle, whatever. There's a ton of stuff as a games master you can come up with, and this universe is just begging for this kind of world. And so onto my biggest point as to how this game works and how encounters and the miniatures part of this game needs to work, which is the biggest part of this game, and it should still be 75-25, the investigation offline and then the miniatures game. Having said all of the stuff I just have done, the way this works best is when your Inquisitor is fighting another character, a gang boss with a bunch of gangers, a dangerous person. I like the danger in this game. Your Inquisitor feeling exposed, gunfights feeling dangerous. So I leave the combat and the miniatures things for set pieces where they're fighting things or they're in situations that are beyond challenging.
And I think it works incredibly well as character versus character. I suppose the best way of thinking about it is this is not like a scrolling beat 'em up. Like Dungeons and Dragons is basically a scrolling beat 'em up in format. You have lots of little dudes that you crush through, and then you have a big boss at the end. That is not how Inquisitor is designed. Inquisitor is designed like a one-on-one beat 'em up, like a Street Fighter or Tekken or something. Each person needs to be important. Everybody they encounter needs to be important and powerful. I mean, you can have a few grunts in there, but everybody needs to be individual. And although you can get mobs and you can get characters offline pre-gens that are quite easy to kill, still hard to find because no one plays this bloody game, but they're there. The way I'm going to play it anyway is I'm going to create everyone from scratch, and I'm going to make them all challenging in their own way. I think this works incredibly well for those intense situations. Every time you kill someone, it's important. Every time you injure someone or get injured, it needs to feel important and dangerous. And I think that's where this game comes into its own. The detail of the injuries and so on. The narrative of a gunfight in this game between important people can feel incredible. It can feel like a Wild West shootout. It can feel so tense. It doesn't work brilliantly to hack through 20 guys. I mean, one of my sons was playing a Marine with 2 power swords at one point and just chopped through like 5 guys. Cool, I mean, that's going to happen. And that's just some of the stuff we were testing out. But it did take about 40 rolls, because there's so many tables, there's so much damage. And the fact that Marine basically obliterates tanks with his little finger is cool. But so he was always going to destroy them, but it was still quite laborious to do. And what we found is that wasn't as fun as it is in modern RPG games. But what was really, really fun, like incredibly fun, was the shootouts where everybody was in danger, and when somebody was smart and didn't commit their whole team to one fight and flanked, and somebody snuck in and got the information while the others were distracting, and perfectly possible in this game. The sneak mechanics are mega easy. It's those situations that make the difference. It's those situations where this game shines. So those are my early impressions of the game. I didn't go into great detail about gameplay and things. I think Ash Baker over at whatever his channel is, Guerrilla Miniatures Games. He's probably the best dude on the internet for this sort of stuff. He did a review of the book and he went into the systems in great detail. Definitely worth checking that out. Incredible channel, absolutely brilliant guy. He's the one to check for the detail, but I can't see him doing gameplay videos of it. I certainly am going to, me and my son are going to put some up so you guys can see how it flows and how it plays. Once we get used to the shootouts, do you know what? It flowed better than I thought. Yes, there's a lot of charts and things, but when you really care that the boss there, or the dude there who's really dangerous, that whatever, the guy with the information gets shot, when you really care, those tables are cool. So there was a point in the first mission that we did where we had to get information from a guy, and my son declared 3 shots on him, thinking I'll just take him down. 3 times I hit him in the head, and the way that it works is you get like levels of damage, and he very, very nearly killed him. And by the 3rd one, we were like, there's no way you can hit him in the head again. And we rolled like 94 to hit him. We were like, oh, come on. And it was just awesome because it really encapsulated that he took a risk as an Inquisitor. He took a risk to unload into this guy thinking, I'm going to drop him. If he lives, he lives. He dies, he dies. And he just happened to clip him really well. And we were all scared of the dice roll. And it was just really fun. Really, really fun. So the detail of the combat is a benefit when you care. You don't care when you're hitting just a grunt who has no real chance, because the Marine is invincible and is going to delete him anyway. So yeah, I mean, I'll let you guys know how I get on. I'm going to try and structure an actual campaign. Going to try and do some stuff with it. I'm sure I'm going to house rule a whole ton of stuff. And I'll let you know. But that's my thoughts on it. Inquisitor, weird game, very 90s. Just don't treat it like a miniatures game, and just don't treat it like an RPG, because it's neither. it's kind of its own thing. And to me, anyway, I'm sure there are other games that are similar, maybe, I don't know. To me, it feels really unique, and I think it's possible, if you play it right, that it'll give you a really unique experience, which, you know, it's not so easy to do after you've been playing war games for 25 years. So thank you very much for tuning in. Obviously, like, subscribe, comment, all you like at the bottom. Apologies to the people who still play Inquisitor, the 10 people who still play Inquisitor. Apologies to everybody who's really keen on this game and who's going to correct me about everything I've said because they play it differently. I'm just saying, as a new starter, this is how I found it. And I'll let you know if I would recommend it as a game or not. The one thing I can tell you right now is I'm super excited to play it, and it's going to be really good. So thank you very much. I hope you all roll sixes. Good luck out there, and enjoy.